take my heart when you go. Kiksuya, Westworld Season 2, Episode 8. Wow. Just, yeah, wow. So, I part of me wants to wait and do this tomorrow, except I don't know that I will have time to do it tomorrow, just because I almost kind of want a night to sort of go over all this in my head. This was a really impressive episode. There have been a number of really impressive Westworld episodes, but Westworld, in sort of typical Nolan fashion, is more cerebral than it is emotional, as a general rule. So when episodes of Westworld are really good, they're really good cerebrally. They're really good on an intellectual level. This thing is that, but is also really emotional, and a lot of that comes down to the performance of the lead in this episode, Zahn McClarnon, who I know from the second season of Fargo, where he played Hansi. So this was an actor I already knew and who I knew was good, but this was a whole range of stuff from him that really, it takes you on a journey, on an emotional journey through his eyes. And I love the ways in which his sort of coming to self was almost the opposite of Maeve, because Maeve started to come to a level of self-awareness, seeing the repetitions in her deaths, actually, and, you know, living and dying so many times, whereas he went almost 10 years without dying. And which actually was a really cool note and a really cool insight that we got with those technicians going, we only update with them when they die. It shows you how little regard there is for the host. Like, oh, you know, we'll deal with them when they die. They all die. It doesn't take long. So the idea of one going 9 years without dying just kind of throws everything out of whack just on that level. But he gives such an amazing performance through this, and I needed that. I've said for the past couple episodes that they need to drill in on these Ghost Nation characters, or at least one of them, and I need to know what their deal is, and now I feel that I do. And it's not just that somebody sat down and explained to me what their deal is. I went on this journey with him, and I get exactly where he's coming from. And that is just really, really impressive. And as much as this is practically a one-man show, there are a lot of other really good performances in it as well. The woman who plays his love, she has this one moment that was an astounding bit of acting to me, when he has taken her, and she didn't recognize him initially, and he just, you know, calmly approaches her, and he says, you know, the phrase that they would say to each other, and this look on her face of revelation and then of sadness, this like flooding over her of what she's lost and what's been missing for who knows how long. That was a lot to communicate in probably like 5 seconds of just, you know, facial response, not even a line. And she did it. She sold it. We get a little bit of Maeve. I have a feeling that the fact that Tessa Thompson's character, last name Hale, and I've lost her first name here, but Charlotte, I just had that whispered to me off screen. You might have even heard that. Thank you, sweetie. So Charlotte Hale's name being heard by Maeve, I am expecting that to come back, and I'm expecting that to bite them in the ass very, very hard. And also with Maeve, we have the writer character, and I've said this in a couple of reviews before this, I've really come to appreciate him as a character, and you can see the depth of when he's being sorry to, you know, saying I'm sorry, and you can see the grief on his face. It's more than just her. that I get from what he's saying. He's not just saying I'm sorry to her. He's saying sorry to every host he ever wrote a horrible, violent, tragic story for them to play out for his or other people's entertainment. I feel the weight of that on him. It is worth saying, though, that they've kind of given that emotional through line to him that was kind of inhabited by Felix last season. And Felix didn't even show up this episode. And they better find out something to do with him in the last 2 episodes, because right now he gets filed under, why did you even come back this season? There's literally been nothing done with you. So that and I'm not saying that him taking on, sort of a more progressed version of Felix's emotional through line was a bad thing. I think we actually get more depth with him because he had further to come, whereas Felix seemed to have a certain amount of sympathy for the hosts even before we met him. Some other things that were really cool. The little bit we get of Ford in this, I felt like I got a lot of insight into not just Ford's state of mind, but his approach to the hosts and sort of his feelings and his thoughts on how they were changing and evolving. And this was something actually my partner Liz and I talked through, and I don't know if this is the way this will play out in the show, but what it feels like to me at this point is that Arnold recognized way before Ford the evolution and the possibility of sentience that existed within the hosts. But his mistake was to try and force that evolution forward with what he did to Dolores, to feeding in, the Wyatt angle, to triggering her killing him. That wasn't a natural evolution. He tried to push them forward to where he believed they were going to end up being. Ford, on the other hand, took a lot longer to realize what Arnold always knew, and possibly just by default for how long he hadn't been aware of this, but he seems to be allowing them to come to their own natural evolution. And I actually think that might be why, this character that we really get to dig into in this episode, along with Maeve, seem to be way more stable than Dolores, who had, the furthest point of her evolution thrust upon her. And the sort of everything going on in her head doesn't seem to be all clicking right yet, whereas these other characters that we're seeing, they arrived at a natural progression and evolution and awareness, and they seem to be much more sane, for lack of a better term, than Dolores does. And I really have to wonder if that's the reason. Well, I'm not even going to wonder. At this point, I'm going to choose to believe that's the reason until proven otherwise. Open to the possibility that I may be proven wrong on that. Oh boy, what else have we got? There were a fair number of predictions in the comment section on the last review of this I did as to how Ed Harris, the Man in Black, was going to survive. Most of them centered around I forget what it was called, but it was sort of a tissue bonder thing that they thought was what he had gotten out of that hole in the wall, the literal hole in the wall, when he first hooked up with Lawrence. And I didn't catch that at the time, but I thought that was a good call. Other people said it was going to be his daughter, who it kind of was. Nobody called the Ghost Nation saving him. That I didn't call that one, and I'm really enjoying his daughter and the disdain she seems to hold him in. And I love her line, he's a burden only I can bear. Like, I think just that she would even say that says everything about her relationship and her feelings about this man. So I am curious and hopeful to dig into that a bit more, which it really was looking like the next episode's going to do. So I'm looking forward to that. Maeve's daughter is there as well. She doesn't, well, I almost said she doesn't do much, except that she has to exude a real sense of just being present when she's listening to the story that's being told to her. And actually, that's not nothing. That can be very difficult to do. And a lot of actors, especially young actors, aren't good at it, aren't good at being, being there with no lines and just being present. And she was. And that helped elevate an already great story that we were getting. And visually, this episode's gorgeous also. There were shots here that just about took my breath away. But really, at the end of it, it is the emotional through line of this character's journey. Because I'm not going to lie, I did choke up. I didn't full on cry, but I did choke up at a few points in this, as he began to realize what he had lost, and especially when he's down in the cold storage and he says, my pain had been selfish because everyone down there, someone else was mourning, even if they didn't know why. And his appreciation for the depth of the pain that existed. And I'll just mention this because I had mentioned, it might have even been in the last review I did. It was the last couple of reviews, at least, that I appreciated how little nudity there was this season. And we got quite a bit more of it, but I'm okay with that because it was in the cold storage, and it was in terms of the host being objects, being props, being mannequins. In this moment, bringing back the dehumanization, which was why the nudity was, or at least for me, was more or less acceptable in the first season. Because that dehumanization was such an important theme of that. And that realization of that was really important to this character's journey. So, him going to the cold storage and seeing all that was important, and it did matter, and I think it did actually enhance the moment for him to see all these bodies stripped down to nothing, just standing there, just being stored because they're not needed right now. And this was a beautiful episode, a powerful episode, an emotional episode. I think I can safely say this is my favorite episode of this particular season. I'd have to think harder on whether or not it tops anything from season 1. It might. I'm not going to make that claim right now, though. But that'll do it. That'll do it for this one. Kiksuya! Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's stuff to do. You know all the stuff. Like and subscribe and check out my podcast and support me on Patreon, perhaps, and Twitter and t-shirts. And there's more stuff even beyond that, all of which is listed down in the description. So until next time, this council is adjourned.